Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Betting Pros Podcast brought to you by BetMGM. I'm your host, Dan Harris. Find me on Twitter at DanHarris80. Week 1 is almost in the books. We still have one game left tonight, but it is already time to start looking ahead at the lines for Week 2 to find out if there is any value, if we expect any movement, all that good stuff. To do that with me is Iain MacMillan from BetSided. He's on Twitter at Iain MacBets, and that's IAIN. Iain, thank you for joining me. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me.
Did you have a good beat on Week 1? Because I felt like there were some games that I saw really clearly and others I was just way off on.
I did very well in Week 1. I went 12-3. I bet on every single game. I had 272 games this year. I'm betting on every single one. I did the same thing last season. And I'm on pace now to have easily my best week I've ever had. So 12-3 heading into Monday Night Football. So I've been lucky.
All right, first of all, for the record, who do you have tonight?
I got the Raiders to cover tonight.
Okay. Or is it 4 or 4.5 when you had it?
I think I have it at 4.
Okay. How did you do last year in your betting every game?
I finished profitable, which is my goal, because obviously if you're betting on every single game for an entire NFL season, then that was kind of my goal, was just to kind of finish in the black. So I don't remember my exact record, but I finished around up 5.5 units, I think it was.
Wow.
So all spreads and totals, and then once a week I do one moneyline underdog week as well. So
I love it. All right. Well done. Well, good. Then let's provide value to the people listening here. Before we get into it, first let me tell you about an offer that we have from BetMGM. For new customers, if you bet $10 on any event that you want, you automatically win $150 in free bets when you use the code JUICE100. We have a podcast here at BettingPros.com called The Daily Juice. That's where the juice comes from. Again, the code is JUICE100. So that's free money. Just to make that as clear as humanly possible, you bet $10, you win $150 in free bets, regardless of the outcome for new customers over at BetMGM. Again, use the code JUICE100. Second, let me remind you of our giveaway. We are giving away a signed Tua Tagovailoa jersey. Entry is really simple. Leave a review for the show on Apple Podcasts or CastBox, and then go to bettingpros.com/review. Okay, not contest like we used to do it. bettingpros.com/review. You want 3 times the entries. Just be a subscriber to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/bettingpros. We do a lot of good stuff over there. We put a lot of stuff on video. We also have a live stream from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Sunday mornings Eastern, where we break down the entire slate and I give out my player props. All right, Iain, better of every NFL game. Are you ready for an early look at Week 2 lines?
absolutely. Very excited. Let's get into it.
So excited. I love it. Okay, so I'm going to be using the consensus lines over at bettingpros.com that looks at a bunch of different books. But obviously, we will look around and see whether or not any individual book is offering anything that might be a little more favorable or anything like that. So let's start with the Thursday night game, and that is the Giants visiting Washington and taking on the Washington football team. Consensus line right now at Betting Pros is Washington laying 3.5 points and the over-under a minuscule 41 points. How do you see this game?
I mean, we're starting off right in Week 2 with just a classic Thursday night football game between two teams that just stinks. So, I mean, that's a pretty low total. My initial thought would have been to go with the under, but I think I'm going to back the Giants on this one. I think they had kind of a bad showing in Week 1. Now, Washington, I was actually on Washington. That was one of the few picks I lost last week, so maybe I'm just a little bit of an anti-Washington bias. I'm a little mad at them a little bit, but I think the Giants are better than what they showed in Week 1. My issue with the Giants is they just don't have an offensive line. I hate that these teams that go up and pick up all these like wide receivers and these finesse positions and don't build the offensive line. So their offensive line is probably going to have issues against this Washington defensive line, but I don't know, man. I'm trying not to overreact to Week 1 results where the Giants looked really bad. I think that's what Week 2 is really all about, trying not to overreact to Week 1 results. So I'm probably going to take a lot of underdogs in Week 2, so I'm going to start off with the Giants on Thursday night.
Yeah, it's really tough. Out of curiosity, what do you think the impact is of the fact that Ryan Fitzpatrick obviously suffered the hip dislocation? He's out. It's going to be Taylor Heineke. Do you think that helps the over, helps the under, or what?
I mean, it certainly has to help the under. I mean, if there's one thing about Fitzpatrick that he can do, and that's throw touchdowns. Now, sometimes he throws 5 interceptions instead of 5 touchdowns, but usually those interceptions then turn into points for the other team, which then help the over as well. So, I mean, I would guess this total would be significantly higher, probably 5 or 6 points higher if Fitzpatrick was playing.
You think it moved that much? See, this is actually, I wish I could have checked it out before we recorded. I actually don't know if it moved? Do you take a look ahead line, or when you make your bets on every game, do you wait until basically you have all the information possible?
Yeah, well, I place my bets because I record my podcast, the Bacon Bets podcast, Wednesday night. So right before I record, that's when I lock in my bets.
Gotcha.
So because of that, I know I'm kind of at the mercy of those Wednesday night lines. So I try not to look too far ahead. But I did not see what the total was on the look ahead lines. Would have been interesting to know, though.
Right, and again, realistically, that's not a huge deal necessarily because they don't really finalize it until obviously the end of the previous week. But interesting because I get that Fitz helps, it leans towards the over, but I think that big a move, that'd be a pretty big move. Heineke's very capable. Yeah. I think for me, I see it sort of the way you do. I mean, the under obviously hitting the Broncos in the Broncos-Giants game, but I don't really think I could go anywhere near the total in this game. But with the spread, if you're giving me the hook with the extra 5, half a point, I'm probably taking it. There are 3s out there, by the way. At FanDuel, there's 3s, so that I don't really like. But if you're giving me the hook, I probably will go there. How about the absolutely dominant Houston Texans going to Cleveland to take on the Browns? The Browns are laying a minuscule 12.5 points. The over-under is 48. What do you think?
This one's tough, man. These big week 2 spreads. My biggest issue, and I'm probably going to go with the Browns here. I haven't finalized it yet, even though it's a big spread. And my big thing is the Texans' run defense. Last year, one of the worst run defenses. I think it might have been the worst. I think them and the Bengals were the 2 worst run defenses in the NFL last year. And then we obviously know that's exactly what the Cleveland Browns do really well, is just pound the rock. I think the Browns have the best offensive line in the NFL. I think Nick Chubb might be the best running back in the NFL. I would say he is. I would go on a limb and say Nick Chubb is. I know a lot of people would obviously say Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey. I love Nick Chubb. I think he's going to have a big year. Big spread, though, man, and I hate taking double-digit favorites in the NFL, but and there's a couple of them this week I might have to. So right now I'm going to lean Browns, but this one's tough, man. This one's tough because the thing about the Texans, they have veterans, they have guys who kind of know the sport. It's not a young team, which isn't good for them long term, but they're going to be able to win a couple games this year, I think, because of that veteran presence on that team. So tough one. I'm going to take the Browns.
Well, Tyrod Taylor, I mean, he's a professional quarterback, right? He's going to keep them sort of in there. Let me ask you something, man. Am I crazy, or I don't remember up until 3 years ago, maybe, seeing just these giant lines. I mean, 12.5 is not insane. Not like when we were getting those 17 or 18 point lines, right, with the Patriots stuff. But to see these lines just routinely, in the double digits all day long, is it me, or do we see that way more frequently these days?
Yeah, I think we are. I mean, they're starting to look like college football lines a little bit. But yeah, I think we are. I don't know if it's just actually a disparity in kind of talent, or if it's just because the public is getting so much more involved in sports betting, and I think that might have something to do with it. That obviously the public bettors are usually a little bit square, so then when it's a big mismatch, they just assume that the better team is going to win by a ton of points, but not necessarily the case. I mean, look at this Kansas City Chiefs last season. Big favorites in almost every single game. A lot of them were double digit, close to double digit in the regular season. They finished 7-9 against the spread. So even though there's mismatches, doesn't mean the team's going to win by a lot. Yeah, like with the last game, I don't really see a ton of value here that I'm dying to lock in a line or anything before we move later in the week. These are just tough, honestly. Let's go to the Patriots visiting the Jets. Patriots are favored by 5.5 points, and the total is 42.5. What do you think? Oh, I think I got to go with the under on that one. I was on the under in the Jets Panthers game this past week. I just don't. I mean, I don't really believe in anything of the Jets offense. The other game I was on the under as well was the Patriots and Dolphins last week. Both those unders cashed as well. I think both teams do have slightly better defenses than offenses, especially the case with the Patriots. I just don't think they have quite enough offensive weapons to put up a ton of points. I'm surprised. I'm actually surprised this total's not in the 30s, 38, 39. So I think you said it was 42.5. I'm probably going to end up taking the under in that one. What's
funny is there are books out there at 43.5. 42.5 is the consensus line. But I'm in agreement with you. I mean, I think the bottom line is that the Jets have a significant weakness in their defense, and it is the secondary, but that's not really necessarily what the Patriots are built to exploit, right? I mean, you're going to have Nelson Aguilar, you're going to have Jacoby Myers, but they're not the type of guys who are really just going to destroy you, who you can pick on them. They are going to want to play conservative. They're going to want to lean on their defense. And we saw the Jets Zach Wilson hung in there and played pretty well in the second half, but their offensive line is decimated. Mekhi Becton's now out for several weeks.
Yeah,
I am with you. If you can get a 43.5, like there are randomly kind of sitting out there, and it's 43 at Fox Bet, and at PointsBet it's 43. I agree with you. I would lock that in because I do not expect it to necessarily move down. Now, this one's a little tough because we have not seen the Raiders play, but the Steelers right now are home, and they are laying 6.5 to the Raiders, and the total is not a big deal. I totally messed up my sheet right now, but I'll start with the spread. I'll get you the total in a second. 6.5. Did I say 6.5? Sorry, Steelers at home against the Raiders.
Yeah, I think I would probably back the Raiders just like I am tonight. I mean, I think the thing with the Raiders is just people think they're worse than what they are. They're actually, I don't think they're that bad of a team, really, especially their offense. They were like something like 6th or 7th in offensive yards per game last season, around the same in third down conversion percentage, which I value quite a bit when handicapping my games. Their defense is obviously horrific, but I think the Steelers' offense is horrific. So if the Steelers are getting that many, or the Raiders are getting that many points, I'm going to definitely back them on this on the spread against the Steelers. Obviously, the Steelers' defense is arguably the top unit in the NFL, but I don't think the Raiders are as bad as a lot of people think. Now, if someone's watching this after Monday night, I might look stupid because who knows what's going to happen in this game. So in my defense, we haven't seen the Raiders yet this season, but I think they're better than... They're not a great team, they're not a good team, but I think they're better than what a lot of people give them credit for.
I'm coming with you on the stupid train then, because I agree with you. I really do. I think the Raiders' offensive line is subpar, but other than that, it's a pretty decent team. I mean, Derek Carr is kind of quietly a pretty okay, decent quarterback in the league. Efficient. Thank you very much. That's a nice way to put it. Darren Waller is a superstar. Obviously, they have the 2 running backs with Josh Jacobs, who, again, as we record this, has an illness. Sounds like he will play tonight, but also Kenyon Drake. The receivers are young but emerging with Ruggs and Bryan Edwards, so that's there. But you're right. The real thing is the Steelers, I mean, their offensive line looked abysmal, as we kind of expected coming into that game against the Bills. They really struggled to kind of have a cohesive offensive philosophy. So I agree if you're getting that points. What about the total, which I have finally found, Ian? Don't worry. The consensus line is actually 48, but when I'm looking at the various books, you've got mostly a big disparity here, more than I usually see. BetMGM, for example, it's 47.5. FanDuel, it's 49.5. So, like, the consensus is 48 in between. So do you think if you're, like, let's say you have access to one of those books, do you find one of those enticing one way or another?
Yeah, I'd be taking the under for sure if it's going to be in the high 40s. I mean, like I kind of said, the Steelers just stopped the Buffalo Bills offense, which we think is still one of the best offenses in the NFL.
Yep.
And then you got the Steelers offense, which can't move the ball at all. I mean, they needed a blocked punt for a touchdown to win that game. So, yeah, I mean, I'm shocked it's in the high 40s. I'd be taking the under in that for sure.
I agree with you. And I think this is something where you probably want to lock it in now, especially if you're like, look, I'm in New Hampshire. The only book we have access to is DraftKings. It's at 49. I will be locking it in. Ooh. Ordinarily, just because I respect you so much, and I'm not going to do it while we're podcasting right now, but ordinarily, for guests that I think lesser of, I would do it actually right now. But all right, let's go to the Bengals visiting the Bears. The Bears here are laying 3 points in our consensus line, and the over-under is 45. Any value in either of those numbers?
Ooh, that's tough. I think that line's set right.
Very sharp.
I'm kind of a Bears hater, to be honest. I bet against them quite often last season, especially right after they got off to that 5-1 start or whatever it was. So I think I would have to back the Bengals here. Also, I was impressed by what I saw from the Bengals in week 1. That was one of the bets that I lost. I was on the Vikings. I thought the Vikings were going to run away with that. I was nervous for Joe Burrow coming off the knee injury because there were some reports that he wasn't quite feeling comfortable in training camp, but he looked great. He, faced the pressure. He threw a lot of great footballs. I think I'm going to back the Bengals in that one, but that line seems just about right. That one's going to be one I'm going to have to dive into a little bit more. But kind of when you're betting on every single NFL game, you're not going to have a strong feel one way or the other on every single one. Some are truly your coin flips.
It's the best. I love it. You're like, well, I'm gonna have to bet this one, so I'll let you know how I feel about it. For me, I completely agree with you. I think both the total and the spread are just right there at a point where you don't want to bet this game. You have to because it's in your contract. But still, I think that it's a game that I want to avoid. Although I will say, I was really impressed with the Bengals. And Burrow, I'm obviously also a fantasy guy and I do projections. I was very nervous about Joe Burrow and what he would look like early in the season. for the mental part of it, not the physical part. Sounded like he had fully recovered, but it's very difficult when you have that injury. And that's really what you were hearing in camp, was that he was struggling the mental part of it. And he hung in there. I think he was sacked 5 times. You wouldn't have known it. He didn't look jumpy in the pocket. He uncorked some great throws. And Jamar Chase, another guy, missing football for a year. Everybody was kind of like, oh no, I'm worried. He looked fantastic too. So I'm definitely more optimistic on the team overall. At the same time, 3 points right there is the correct spread. The Rams are visiting the Colts. The Rams are favored by 4, and the total is 47.5.
Rams. I already was high on the Rams heading into the season, and then they did nothing but make me even more confident in them against the Bears there on Sunday night. Matthew Stafford looks like, at least through 1 week, he looks like he's living up to people's expectations. The defense is still a dominant unit, maybe not quite as good as the defense last year, but then the complete opposite was the case for the Colts. Carson Wentz didn't impress me whatsoever. Colts offense didn't necessarily look great, didn't look explosive. Yeah, that's definitely a good spot for the Rams, I think. Wait, where'd you say that game was at? It's in
Indianapolis. Indianapolis, yeah. So
still,
obviously, yeah. Otherwise, you would expect it to be
right.
Closer to touchdown. I agree with you, by the way. So I do think the Colts are going to play a little bit better here. I mean, remember, they had such little time to really practice and work, but they really have nothing offensively right now. I mean, their receivers, right. I like Michael Pittman Jr., I like Zach Pascal. They're certainly not going to be able to do anything against this defense here with the cornerbacks. And then you just are, Jonathan Taylor is very good, but Nyheim Hines, it's gimmicky a little bit with this offense. And I think you're going to get some value right near now early on the Rams. I think you had value in week 1 as well, which I think most bettors saw. That's why you saw the spread rise overall.
Yep.
What about the total? Any feelings on it? It is 47.5.
I would probably lean the under on that one. Generally in totals, I'm usually an under guy as it is, because I always feel like the points, the totals are a point or two higher than they normally would be, because the public loves betting on overs. I mean, who the under is not an enjoyable.
Who wants to root against something, right? Who wants to root against anything, right?
It's not a fun bet to make. So usually in that one, especially where it's close, I would lean the under. And yeah, I don't know. Obviously, the Rams defense is going to be one of the best in the unit, and one of the best units in the NFL. It's going to be hard for me to take an over in a Rams game this year. But.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you for sure. But for me, it's a little bit of a stay away, just because I don't know. I mean, I could see the Colts defense is not bad, but you saw Russell Wilson. I could see the Rams by themselves putting up, whatever, a 30 spot if they absolutely had to. Bills visiting the Dolphins. The Bills are laying 3.5 points, and the total is 48.5. What do you think?
Gonna take the Bills. This is a spot where, like I said earlier, I'm trying not to overreact to week 1. The Bills didn't look great, especially offensively, but I think they are still the team that we saw last year. And the interesting thing about the Miami Dolphins, and they were the best spread team last year. What were they, 11-5, I think, in the regular season against the spread? And I was on the wrong side, the large majority of them. And, they had the same kind of outcome in week 1 where they won and covered the spread, but if you look at their defensive numbers, they're giving up yards. But what's happening is they're getting timely turnovers at the perfect time, and that's what their whole kind of motive was last year. They led the league in takeaways, and turnovers, in my opinion at least, there is at least some degree of luck to it. It's not all skill. You need the running back to fumble the ball. You need the quarterback to misread a route or coverage and throw a bad ball. So if they don't keep getting these kind of takeaways, the Dolphins shouldn't be as good as what they are, especially obviously their defense. But they keep getting these takeaways. So it was funny to see that exact same thing happen in week 1 that we saw all season last year in the Dolphins. So I'm going to continue fading the Dolphins because, like I said, I just think takeaways have a little bit of an element of luck, and that defense is giving up yards. The offense isn't getting a ton of yards, and I think the Bills are going to have a big bounce back week, so I'm going to go with them.
Yeah, I think this is really a Bills statement game at this one, because I think it has to be, because there are question marks about them, because Josh Allen, in fantasy especially, we talk about that, everybody waits for Josh Allen to turn back into the guy who the Bills draft, and you're just this inaccurate guy, don't know what we saw last year. It's eventually things are going to come back. That's not going to happen. Josh Allen is great. The system that Dable put in together is great. They're going to be a fantastic team, including this year. There are some 3s out there. There's actually 1, 2.5 out there, which I love.
Wow.
But even with the hook, I'm totally fine with that. I'm not really going near the spread. It's at 48.5. That strikes me as about right for something like that, but I do agree with you that even on the road, I'm taking the Bills, even if you got to lay the hook. How about the Saints visiting the Panthers? The Saints are 3.5-point favorites, and I will get you the total in like 2 seconds. How about the 3.5-point favorites for the Saints?
Got to take the Saints, man. Jameis Winston is my preseason bet to win MVP, and he proved me right a little bit there in week 1. Now, he didn't throw for a ton of yards. He was, 156 yards, but somehow still had 5 touchdown passes, which is kind of insane.
Yep.
But I'm an anti-Sam Darnold guy. I don't understand why the Panthers opted for Sam Darnold over Teddy Bridgewater. I thought, just look at their completion percentage in their career, and we'll get to Teddy Bridgewater when we talk about the Broncos. But not a believer in Sam Darnold. It's going to be tough for me to ever bet on him. I'm going to take the Saints in this one. I loved how Jameis Winston looked. He didn't throw any interceptions, and that's his key thing. So give me the Saints in that one.
I technically threw an interception that was negated by a nonsense penalty, but yes, he looked good. The offense looked good. I know, officially not. I'm just teasing you.
No, that's fair.
As a Jets fan, there is no greater fader of Sam Darnold than myself. And again, the one non-totals bet that I gave out on our show on Thursday was that I liked the Jets getting 5.5. Now, that was a sweat. Little bit of a lucky cover, but whatever, they covered. I do not believe in this Panthers team whatsoever. I do absolutely believe in the Saints team. Now, they are suffering from a few injuries here on the defensive side of the ball, so that is something that could mess around with it, but I don't really see these two teams as in the same class right now, just given what we saw in that game against the very good Packers team. I don't think the Packers are done. I mean, that defense, again, they have injuries, but they're legitimate, and if you're going to have that defense going up against Sam Darnold, especially off his high of his revenge game win, I like that. I also kind of lean towards the over at 44.5. It's a pretty low total, not crazy low or anything like that, but I do think that the Saints are going to be able to score pretty easily on the Panthers, not at will, but certainly they'll be able to put up points, and I think there's just enough there. I think the Panthers probably only need to put up maybe 2 touchdowns. They'll probably find their way into it, and I think the Saints may go up ahead and sort of lead it to the backdoor over. So for me, I kind of like the over under 44.5, the over, but I don't feel like it's something you need to rush out and bet. I don't expect that line to move all that much. You know what I'm saying?
And I will say one other thing about the Saints. Nobody talks about the Saints, or at least in this offseason, nobody really talked about how good their defense was. I think they were third in scoring last year, their defense was, but that's not a thing that's ever really brought up. And then you saw that defense against the Packers there in week 1. So Saints continue to be underrated, I think.
Yep. All right, you mentioned the Broncos. Let's go to them. They are visiting the Jaguars. The Jaguars are getting 6 points from the Broncos here, and the total is 45.5. What do you think?
I'm not a big trends guy when it comes to, this team's 10-2 against the spread in this spot. But there's one trend that I'm obsessed with that I have to continue betting on, and it is Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy covers, man. I don't have his against the spread record in front of me, but I think it was 72% or 75% hitting in this season, and he just covered in week 1. He's a sports better's. He should be in the Sports Betting Hall of Fame. If that ever exists, he needs to have a whole room dedicated to himself. So, like I said, I'm not usually a big trends guy, more of a stats guy, but I got to keep riding my guy, Teddy Bridgewater, man. I'll take the Broncos.
And I think if you do like him, you should probably bet him now, because I think that if anything, this spread rises, right? If anything, the public is I'm not betting on the Jaguars. Give me the Broncos, Teddy, whatever, and it rises closer to a touchdown. So I think you do want it now when it's below a touchdown. You're not going to miss out on anything if you bet it. It's not like it's going to drop to 4 or anything like that, so you're not missing anything by doing it now. Any lean at all on the total? 45.5.
Probably under. I mean, Trevor Lawrence struggled against the Texans defense, which is supposed to be one of the worst defenses in the NFL, and now he's going up against a very, very good, probably underrated defense in the Broncos. And the Broncos offense, as much as I like Teddy Bridgewater, it's not exactly an explosive, high-scoring offense. It's efficient. He doesn't really turn the ball over. I would probably go under on that total for sure.
All right, next one. Both teams winning in week 1. The 49ers visiting the Eagles. The 49ers are favored by 3.5 points, and the total is 50. Obviously, the 49ers suffered a few injuries with Verrett, and they've got Mostert, who's now going to be out 8 weeks, so they're a little banged up here. Meanwhile, Jalen Hurts was super impressive, obviously, in that opening win. What do you think?
Yeah, heading into the season, I thought Jalen Hurts was one of the more underrated quarterbacks. I didn't think he really got a fair shot last year. Started late when the team had basically already given up on the season. They're getting 3.5 points in this spot. And what happened with the 49ers defense? This is supposed to be one of the best, defenses in the NFL, and they just allowed the Detroit Lions, led by Jared Goff, to put up like 430 yards against them. What's going on with the 49ers defense? Now, to be fair, the majority of those points and yards came late in the game when basically the game was at least supposed to be over, or felt like it was over. So maybe they are as good as they're supposed to be, but I'll take the Eagles getting 3.5 points at home. It's over. It's just over that magic number of 3 that obviously, if you're betting on football, you know that. I'll take the home team and the points.
So will I. It's all 3.5. I mean, I like a home dog. Just generally, that piques my interest a little bit. But I think you might get a little bit of the Eagles being undervalued early in the season. I think bettors are probably willing, maybe books too, as books look to sharpen their models and their lines. Like, I don't think they've fully figured out exactly. And, I joked about it with our last guest, Sean, because we were both joking about how we had Nick Sirianni, Coach of the Year tickets at like 35-1 or 40-1. And part of it was they designed this entire offense. They had the whole offseason to design an offense, rumors aside about Deshaun Watson, around Jalen Hurts and his skill set. He has some playmakers and some receivers right now because, again, he has Devontae Smith, who's really good. Jalen Reagor looks pretty good. You've got Dallas Goedert still there. The offensive line is healthy. It's going to make a big difference. And again, the 49ers suffered a bunch of injuries. If you're giving me the hook with the team at home, I'm more than willing to take it. How about is another big spread that we talked about? The Bucs are laying 12.5 at home to the Falcons. The total is 52.
I'm a Falcons fan, man. They're bad. They're so bad, man. I have to take the Buccaneers in this spot, man. I was obviously as a Falcons fan when no matter how a game goes, that's the game where I'm going to be focused on more afterwards as far as looking at what happened in that game, what went right, what went wrong. Nothing went right for the Falcons. They have an offensive lineman, I'm blanking on the name, but they had an offensive lineman who had like a PFF ranking of like 1.98 or something like that, which is Matt Ryan apparently wasn't responsible for any of the hits that he took or any sacks that he took. Their offensive line is terrible. And when you looked on the defensive side, they have one good cornerback in A.J. Terrell. The other guy just stinks, and the Eagles targeted him the whole game, and that's where they got the large majority of their yards. So if Jalen Hurts can pick apart your defense, what is Tom Brady going to do and the Super Bowl defending champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers? So, I mean, if the Falcons can't score a touchdown on the Eagles, what are they going to do against this Buccaneers? If they can't stop Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, what are they going to do against the Buccaneers? Once again, I hate betting big favorites in the NFL, especially when it comes to divisional opponents, because they typically know each other a little bit better. But I can't bet on my Falcons, man. They might be the worst team in the NFL this year.
This was one of the bigger lines that I'm okay with, like you, because I agree. There's nothing. You can't watch that game, the Eagles against the Falcons, and think that anything remotely optimistic about what we saw on either side of the ball. You're absolutely right. Now you've got the Bucs. They're coming off. They're rested, right? They've got the mini bye here because of the opening day. They're just, you know what they can do offensively, like whatever they want. And their defense was probably a little pissed off because they allowed the Cowboys to kind of Dak Prescott to throw for over 400 yards. So I'm in agreement with you. I would take this at 12.5 right now. Again, I don't think you have any real chance of losing value if you bet it now. I think if anything, you could lose value if you don't bet it. The total at 52, I'm probably just staying away from because I have no sense of if the Falcons are going to be able to score at all or not, or whether we saw like, oh God, they're going to be a team that's going to put up, 6-10 points a game. So for me, I'm staying away from the total personally. But
the Bucs themselves, because the Bucs might score 50 points themselves.
Right. You want the over then? You want to go over with the 52? Is that where you're leaning?
Yeah.
All right, there we go. Go for the over right there. Be a public, root for scoring. All right, let's go to the Vikings visiting the Cardinals. The Cardinals are laying 4.5 points, and the total is at 51. Obviously, incredibly impressive opening day performance by the Cardinals, who look like world beaters, both offensively and defensively. You mentioned the Vikings. Big disappointment. Expected them to be able to beat the Bengals. They didn't, but what do you think here? 51 for the total and 4.5 is the spread.
This one's a tough one. So the Cardinals were actually my money line bet in week 1, so I cashed on them, but then the Vikings were one of my favorite picks, if not like a top 3 favorite pick for me in week 1, because I thought the Vikings were going to have a big bounce back season. They had a lot of injuries on defense last year. I thought I was expecting so much more, especially with Dalvin Cook. So now I'm kind of torn. Like, do I stick to that take? Like, I'm trying not to overreact to week one, but the Vikings did not really look great in week one. So this might be the toughest game on the board to bet for me this week. I think I'm going to plug my nose and take the Vikings in the points here. Yeah. I think I'm going to try not to overreact to that, subpar performance against the Bengals. Maybe the Cardinals. I faded the Titans with the Cardinals money line because I think the Titans are way worse than what their record was last year. They had like a bottom 3, bottom 4 defense. I do think the Vikings defense is better than Titans. Hopefully they can slow down the Cardinals offense a little bit. I hate the bet, but I'm going to plug my nose and take the Vikings in the points.
So I'm not getting anywhere near this game, but I will say that if I did, I do think that this strikes me as something where the public is just going to be all over the Cardinals because of what we saw, and the sharp money is going to flood in on the Vikings because they know that the Vikings aren't as bad as what we saw last week, and the Cardinals aren't as good. And again, the big thing, nobody really talked about this, at least I didn't hear about it, and I didn't really think about it, especially from a betting or fantasy perspective, is just how little time the Titans had to become a cohesive unit, given the COVID stuff that they dealt with, like a real legit outbreak. Their coach, their quarterback, they had tons of stuff. I just feel like that game, I'm throwing it entirely out in my mind for the Titans, but Cardinals did look good, and it takes some major, strength in your stomach to be able to bet on the Vikings. But I do agree, if I were going to place a bet on this game, which I am not, I do think that the Vikings are probably the side. And again, this is something where I think you don't have to rush in. I do see a couple of 3.5s out there. My guess is it's going to climb because, again, I think you're going to see a lot of public money at the very least come in on the Cardinals. How about the Chargers laying 3 to the Cowboys in Los Angeles with a total just 55? Just 55 for the total. What do you think here, that line?
Yeah, the total actually moved quick. I think it opened at like 51 or 52. Yeah. I think it was 52 it opened up, so already shot up. Another tough game, man, because the Cowboys have one of the best offenses in the NFL and maybe the worst defense in the NFL. So, is the defense going to be able to step up at all in this game, or is the offense going to take a step back at all in this game? I think I'm going to take the Cowboys in this one.
Okay.
I believe in Dak Prescott. I mean, he torched that Buccaneers defense, which is a very good defensive unit last week. I didn't love what I saw from the Chargers offense, but obviously they're going up against the Washington defense. That's one of the best in the league. Another tough game to call. I'll take the Cowboys though, but tough.
Do you think this is where the line ends up at 3, or do you think it moves one way or the other throughout the week?
I don't think there's going to be much movement.
I agree.
At least my general feeling right now is this is one that people are kind of torn on. They're a little split. And when you get that, I mean, it's not like the Cardinals game where we imagine a ton of money is going to come in on the Cardinals. I think people are kind of split because I don't think everyone really knows what to do with the Cowboys yet either.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's probably going to land here at 3. I think you're going to get money on both sides. And with the total, Ian, I mean, it's 55, but I can't take the under on it. Like, I recognize how insane that total is. I completely understand. That's a bananas total, and I can't go. I'm not taking the over, I think. I'm just staying away from the total.
Yeah, I don't think I can. Yeah, I can't take an under in a Cowboys game. I'm not subjecting myself to that kind of torture.
That is fair. Yeah, I like it. Seahawks at home laying 5.5 to the Titans, who are obviously coming off a little bit of a shellacking, and the total at 54. What do you think?
Yeah, Seahawks. I'm going to continue to fade the Titans. Like I said, they're an 11-5 team last year. I think it's to be 11-5 with. So if I'm correct, they were 28th or 29th in opponent yards per game last season. The only teams that were worse were the Lions, Jaguars, and Texans. And that's not good. I don't know how a team can get to 11-5 with that kind of defense. And they did make some improvements in the offseason. I don't think it was enough, though, especially their passing defense is not good. We saw what Kyler Murray did through the air last week, and now you got Russell Wilson against them. So, I mean, good luck with that. So I'm going to take the Seahawks in this one. I'm going to keep fading the Titans until I think the lines are set at a more appropriate number for how I kind of evaluate them. And right now, they shouldn't. I would set the Seahawks probably at 6 points right now.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want it. I just want to stay away from this one. I see everything you're saying, but I'm not fading the Titans nearly as much as you are. I understand why you are, and I think the Seahawks are going to do what they did last year, which is come out really hot, especially offensively before they kind of turtle up a little bit because of they have one bad game or something like that. But still, I could also see a scenario where the Titans and Mike Vrabel, who I respect a ton as a coach, kind of lays into them, and they come out much sharper here. The total also, like, I'd love to go over on this because I think there's going to be a ton of scoring here. I don't think the Seahawks defense is good enough to shut down the Titans with an extra week here to get better, and I think the Seahawks can pretty much score at will. But at 54, man, I don't think I can go near it. It's not a total that I want to go near. How about you?
Yeah, I think I would take the under. Obviously, we know the Titans love to run the ball, and when you run the ball, I mean, obviously, we all know the clock keeps going.
Sure.
Less time on the clock, less time for points. That's tough, yeah, because the Titans' defense it's kind of tough to bet on an under with the Titans' defense, but I think I'd go under.
All right, Chiefs visiting the Ravens, the game we all deserve. Again, we have not seen the Ravens yet. Hopefully they look like what we expected them to look. They've dealt with several injuries coming in, but as of right now, the Chiefs are favored by 3, and the total is at 55.5. These totals, man, just nonsensical almost. By the way, one of my favorite memories, I think, from last year is when the Ravens were favored against the Chiefs. I'm pretty sure that was last year. And I remember taking Patrick Mahomes as a dog and just feeling like it was like the dumbest, like goofy. It's like when you, like, you know, win the lottery or something like that. It was so ridiculous. Here, not a dog, obviously, laying 3 in Baltimore. What do you think?
Yeah, once again, a little tough because we haven't seen the Ravens yet, but I mean, got to take the Chiefs, man. Yeah. I mean, I say got to take the Chiefs, but then again, I mean, the Chiefs have not been good covering the spread. They didn't cover the spread in week 1 either, but I was on the Browns. But anytime you can get the Chiefs at this low of a number, I think you have to take them. Where you want to avoid the Chiefs is when you get up closer to a touchdown, because it's tough to win football games by more than a single score. But I think the Ravens might regress a little bit this year. I'm very interested in seeing, and hopefully we get a little bit of a sense of it tonight, what Lamar Jackson's going to be like, because he took a little bit of a step back last year. So is he going to return to MVP form, or is he going to look more like he did last year? So this is one that's very tough to call without seeing one of the two teams involved. Like, I feel like I have a better sense of the Raiders, even though I haven't seen them this year, where the Ravens, I really want to see them, get a sense for them, and also obviously we all know how banged up their backfield is.
Right.
I had my phone on the other day. I thought I might get a call from the Ravens to get signed by them. Because,
they're still looking. Don't worry, get up there.
So I got to back the Chiefs, and I would guess, my guess would be, I mean, unless the Ravens blow out the Raiders tonight, now I might look stupid in hindsight saying this, but I think the spread's probably going to get bigger after this game.
Yeah, I think that's right. So again, if you're listening to it, people are probably listening to this after the game is over anyway. So maybe the line has already moved. It is 3, and it's 3 everywhere. Like, there's no non-3s that I'm looking at in the market, because I think that is probably the right line necessarily. But I would take the Chiefs. If it gets over a field goal, I do worry a little bit, because you're right. The Chiefs are a phenomenal team, but not great at covering the spread necessarily. If it's at 3, I feel fine, because I really do feel confident that A, the Chiefs are going to win this game, again, without having seen this go. And second, that it's going to be by at least a field goal. So I feel comfortable at 3 when it gets 3.5. The total is bananas. I'm just not going near a 55.5 point spread. I get it. Patrick, the Chiefs can do that by themselves if they really had to, but I'm just staying away. Last one here, a really, really, really angry Packers team at home on Monday Night Football against the Lions, laying 10.5 points. They're making sure that hook is there, because they're going to make you, if you want the Packers, they're going to make you mad, and total of 48.5 points.
Yeah, I'm realizing now that I like 3 double-digit favorites in the NFL, and that's not
what would
good.
The spread have to be for you to not take the Packers in this game, Ian? That's the question.
I think it'd have to be 2 touchdowns. I think it would have to be. I mean, but then again, the Lions put up 430 yards last week, so maybe the Lions aren't as bad as everyone thinks. Maybe Dan Campbell's, kind of raw, motivation kind of tactics is kind of working for the Lions. So it's hard to really argue too much against the Lions right now, but the Packers, I would think, are angry. Now, I'm never going to handicap too much based on what I assume someone's emotions are going to be heading into a game, but they're either the number 1 or number 2 scoring offense last year. They're going up against what is supposed to, they are the bad defense, because even though that game was close, the 49ers put up a ton of points on them. So the Green Bay will score. It's just whether or not are the Lions going to be able to keep it close enough during the game. So I will back the Packers in this one, but I might need to reevaluate some of my past picks, because taking 3 double-digit favorites makes me worry. But I like all 3 of them, so I'll probably stick with them.
Yeah, I think that the Packers are the right side. Ooh, look, see, this is a New York experience for you. If everyone can hear that in the background, Ian has moved to New York. It's fine. You're fine. They're not there for you, I promise. I miss my old sounds of New York. Anyway, yeah, I agree with you that even at 10.5, I lean towards the Packers. I'm actually a little more excited about the total because I do think that the Packers, first of all, the Lions have terrible defense. They have a terrible secondary, and Jeff Okudah now has, I think, an Achilles injury. So a bad secondary just gets worse. I think the Packers are going to put up a monstrous amount of points in this game. I think it's going to be a ton. And I think that the Lions, I think they'll probably be able to do not what they did last time, but in terms of the backdoor sort of like, this game is over, the Packers don't want to get injured on defense, they're going to step back a little bit, there's going to be 45,000 dump-offs to Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift, and they'll be able to get there. So that actually is a number that I would bet. I don't think that it's necessarily going to climb throughout the year. Like, I don't think throughout the week, I don't think we're getting a 50 or 51, but at the same time, 48.5, I kind of lean the over because I view a lot of points coming in this game. What do you think of that?
Yeah, give me the over. I agree with every single point you had about the over.
I love it. That's it. Those are all the games, man. I'm so happy football is back. We are done recording this before we get to look idiotic after, the whatever happens with the Raiders and the Ravens game. But Iain, you have been a guest on the show several times. It is always a pleasure to have you. I really appreciate it. Tell everybody where they can find you and your work.
Yeah, absolutely. The best place is always Twitter, as you mentioned at the start of the show, though. There, Iain Mac Bets, IAINMACBETS. My parents decided to throw an extra I into my name to make my life difficult. Also, check out BetSided, and the Bacon Bets podcast comes out Thursday, and that's when I give my pick. I call it the Road to 272 this year, because I give a pick for every single, all 272 NFL games, so keep an eye out for that.
I mean, I really look forward. I did see that you were doing that, because I think you have it pinned to your Twitter profile, but man, God bless you. Good luck with it. I hope you again have a profitable year, because that is not easy. Anyway, we will be back later in the week. Joe Pisapia and Scott Bogman are going to do the college football breakdown. And then I'll be back on Thursday with another guest talking about our best bets for week 2 of the NFL season. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and I'll talk to you again in a couple of days.